we are actually doing some in-depth analysis tests comparing these three batteries. So we're going to show you the temperature that the batteries achieve, but most important, the voltage, guys, the voltage of each of these batteries. Take note of the voltages, the difference between, particularly between the Itechworld and these two batteries. You're going to see something really interesting in these tests. We are going to push the absolute maximum out of my Victron gear. Check it out. I think you're going to find it very interesting, guys. So that's my original battery, the one I had been using for the past 14-15 months. So it's the Itechworld 120X battery. It doesn't perform to specs that they've got online, as you're aware, mentioned it many times. At least this one doesn't. It just doesn't do the job for me. The 240 volt setup in here, I need the extra amps. I can't run my larger air fryer with this one because it just overheats. Let's put this to the test. Let's set it up right now. A lot of you have been looking forward to, including myself. So we started off with a toaster, and then we added a kettle, and then after that we then ran my larger air fryer and compared the three batteries. We're running some tests with the Itechworld 120X battery. We've got a toaster here which is rated around 600-700 watts, and we're having a look at some specs here. So remember now we are running the Itechworld battery and producing 619 watts, the toaster, and the battery is at 12.76. so this is what I want you to particularly notice, 12.76, and it's drawing 59.4 amps. That's 59.4 amps. So I want you to notice that, and I'm recording this for my records as well, and we can see battery terminals at 29 degrees Celsius. And we've got a little kettle here running. So we are now, alright, this is a good test. I want you to see this now. Okay, so we're running a 1.32 kilowatt load through this, so which is drawing 1733 watts out of the battery. Now this is a prime example to show what that lower voltage is drawing. So we're drawing 1.32 kilowatts, and yet we're drawing 142.4 amps out of the battery. Now I've also got a fridge running here, guys, so if you want to know what the discrepancy is between the differences, the fridge is running here, but that's probably only about 35-40 watts come from the fridge there. So but have a look at this, 12.14 volts, 143 amps. Now we're going to run the same test with the Scout battery, and we'll show you what the voltage is and the difference it makes on the amperage draw. Now battery terminals just head up to 40 degrees Celsius, so it is starting to get a bit hotter because we're really putting on a decent load on this Itechworld battery. This is probably about the maximum I would push the Itechworld battery.
Yeah, that temperature on the terminal is rising very quickly.
So as you can see here, it's going up to 42 degrees Celsius now, and it does. You should see what it's like when it hits about 150, 160. I've seen it as high as 80 degrees Celsius, and I had to just shut down the test. I kid you not, 80 degrees Celsius, I've seen that as high as. So it would have been on the verge shutting down my battery. Welcome back, guys. So it's about 15-20 minutes later. So I swapped the battery over. We've taken the Itechworld battery out, and in place I've put the Scout battery in, and now we are running the toaster. And I want you to see the data on this, guys. Okay, 622 watts, but take a look at the battery voltage, 13.08 volts it's holding, 58 amps coming out, and check that out, 5 hours 50 minutes time still to go. How awesome is that? And remember, we've still got the fridge going. So is this kettle ready to go?
Yep. We're
going to put on the kettle now. Now I want you to have a look at the draw on here. So we got 1.33 kilowatts, and look at the volts, 12.84. Now if I recall correctly, the Itechworld was 12.1, wasn't it?
Yeah, 12.1, 12.2, I think.
Yeah, between 12.1 or 12.2. And you see the amperage draw, it's 133. In the next test, to be very interesting to try after I've run this for a little while, is to try my big air fryer. I reckon the air fryer will run now. There's no problems at all. So we're looking 12.83. So we've got 133 amps draw. Now of course the higher draw rate, if I had a 3000 watt inverter and drawing 3000 watts out of this, then this half a volt is going to make a lot bigger difference. So there's more so these big differences you'll see is when you running your big loads like 3000 watts or so. So there you go, and the battery temperature at 30 degrees Celsius, 31, where it was hitting about 42, 43 on the Itechworld. So this is something we're also going to keep notice of, is the battery temp. In fact, if I go on this other screen, it'll show the battery temp here as well, as you can see there. So the kettle's just gone off. And look at that, we just ran the kettle, we just ran the, yep, the toaster's still on, and the battery's still nice and cool, 31 degrees Celsius. It was 42 and still climbing on the other one. So what I'm going to do now is grab my air fryer. Alright guys, this is me Taste the Difference Air Fryer Pro. Wow, it needs a good clean. Got some oil over the front. I'll have to give that a good clean shortly. And we're going to try this now. And let's go to setting. Here we go. We'll go to stake settings and hit this. So that's the Taste the Difference Air Fryer Pro oven. And we are now pushing 1.56 kilowatts. So of course we got this fridge running, but it's only probably drawing 30-40 watts. I should grab one of my solar panels and plug it in shortly. Might do that. Go try out the 300 watt kick-ass solar panel. So but interesting, it's 12.74 volts here. So we're looking at 12.74 volts, 164 amps draw, and the battery terminal is sitting on 32 degrees Celsius, so we've got no excessive heat on there. You can see this at this load, we'll be able to run this for an hour and 21 minutes. So there it is, 1.54 kilowatts is what this is rated at. So there you again, have a look, 12.74 volts, it's holding those volts. Awesome, excellent. Right guys, so what we got here now is the Powerpaul Australia Mercury 330, which is a 330 amp hour battery. So we're now going to test it. So we're going to test it the same as what we did before. So right now we got the toaster on, and as you can see here, looking at the specs there, 624 watts, and we are looking at 13.12 volts on the battery, and 57.2 amps is coming out of the battery. About 4 or 5 minutes, we will then put the kettle on, and after we run that test, we will then turn those off and run my air fryer that needs a good clean. So we'll keep looking at this. So we're looking at 13.09 volts and batteries at 28 degrees Celsius. And check that out guys, we've drawn 58 amps and we've still got nearly 6 hours remaining time. If I did that with the Itechworld, that would be less than, what, hour and a half. So that's a big difference. And remember, we're still running the fridge here, which is around 45 watts. So for these tests, the fridge is consuming about 30-45 watts. So I've got it set at its coldest settings. As you can see, fridge is 1.3 degrees Celsius, freeze is minus 24.8 degrees Celsius. With this battery, I'll probably leave it at that coldest setting because they'll be able to run that for quite some time before it needs recharging. So as you can see here, that's probably long enough now. If you want to run get Paul to turn on the kettle. There we go. We've got 12.93. So you can see that the Mercury is more efficient. So, whoa, toaster's done. So that's just, the toaster just went off momentarily. It's back on now, so we're drawing 132. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good. 132. So that's about what I would expect. So that's awesome. Now, as you can see, we got nothing. We got no charger running in. That one there's for the AC. And we got solar panel here. I did brought out my high voltage solar panels and tested them before, and now they were putting in 15 amps. So I'll just run this for a little while longer, just so I can get enough data to get onto the portal. And so that's awesome. So that's working really good. That's constant load, 1700 watts. I've got another 300 watts portable solar panel. So I've got access to 550 watts of solar panels. What we'll do now, we'll switch that off and try the other one. So now, let's try this one. Set it exactly the same as it was before. There we go. Now let's go have a look at this graph now. Check that out guys, she's pushing 22,000 watts, 2100 watts, 12.86. So 12.86, 163, 1.56, and this battery will handle that no problems whatsoever. So you can see the 34 degrees Celsius. It's the battery terminal, so we're actually recording the temperature on the positive battery terminal. Now let me turn the fridge off. Did that make much difference? Was at 163 before, so we're now at 159, which is about right. So there's not a lot of load from the fridge. So remember, that's 2050 watts. That's coming out the battery here. At 1 hour and 39 minutes load to go, so we're still on 159. It's very consistent. Battery voltage is remaining on 12.83 the whole time, so it's not moving at all. Turn the fridge back on. There we are. Oh yeah, it's just dropped out now because it's got up to temp. There we are, it's just cut back in. So we've got 2086 watts. So I'll let this run a little bit longer so I can build up the data for the portal. Right guys, we're going to try extreme test here. We're going to put a big load on this and test this out. So I'm going to run my air fryer. I'm going to run a kettle off a multi-plus 1600 watt inverter and the Mercury 330 amp hour Powerpaul Australia battery. Now, not recommended to run this, but I just want to show you when you got good quality gear just how much you can actually push it. Okay, 266 amps, and we do have a warning guys. Obviously, naturally it is going to warn, but there you go. So I just wanted to show you that, and eventually it will. Oh, the kettle's just oh no, the kettle is still on. Yeah, we're still pushing. So there you are guys, just wanted to show you on what sort of numbers we can push. There we go. We just got a couple of, here we are. We got some warnings here, inverter overload. And this is what it does guys, so you won't, this is normal, you won't hurt it. You won't hurt it. So we've got an overload here, so I can go through and delete all these. So we got 3, 1255, 1259, 1259. So yeah. And now what happens guys is that warning overload, so we'll turn those off. I'll just select this so that it turns off the warning. Oh, here we are, got to click on this. What happens now guys is the inverter will now go through. See, it's just turned on. So what happens if you overload the multi-plus, what it does is it doesn't shut off and stay off all the time. It'll go through a booting mode, it'll go through a testing phase, and if everything passes, it'll switch back on again. So just one of the features of the multi-plus. But I was pushing well in excess of its capacity there, but just to show you, now if I had a 3000 VA, that would have ran no problems at all, no issues at all. But I just wanted to show you, I mean, we managed to push up to 267 amp hours. Now the negative, it's just got fraction little warmth in there, not much at all, just a tiny bit. The positive as well, just a little bit more. What an interesting test that was. I don't know about you, but I found that really interesting. Particularly the part about the voltage. But not just that, the continuous amp discharge that I've been able to sustain out of the Powerpaul Australia 12v Lithium batteries, both the Scout and the Mercury. That allows me to use my large air fryer, which is awesome, guys, because with that air fryer it's got a rotisserie in it that I can cook a really awesome roast in it. In fact, I cooked one last night and it turned out perfectly. I'll show a photo of it right here. So that's the roast that I cooked last night using my Air Roaster Pro. So let's go over the data, shall we? This is going to be interesting. Now let's start off with the Itechworld. In regards to the Itechworld, well, actually in regards to all the batteries, you notice that I ran the test where we're using a toaster, a kettle and my air fryer. Now I didn't run the air fryer with the Itechworld battery because that battery cannot sustain those sort of loads coming out the battery. The battery overheats. The one time that I ever tried, it got to the point where the battery terminal hit 80 degrees Celsius, and when I saw that I shut it down straight away in order to save the battery from going into its fail-safe mode where it cuts the BMS out. Because apparently to boot up the battery again when the BMS shuts down on Itechworld battery is a real pain in the rear end, excuse the pun, to accomplish. Whereas with the Powerpaul Australia battery, guys, it's just a matter, there's a button on top of the battery, hit that and it powers on again. As simple as that. Now, let's go through some tests here, shall we? The Itechworld battery, we ran the toaster. The voltage with the toaster running at 622 watt load was 12.76 volts, and that was discharging 59.5 amps. So we ran the same test with the Powerpaul Australia Scout battery, which is a 280 amp hour battery. It's got a BMS on it continuously of 250 amps. So that held a voltage of 13.08 volts, 58.3 amps at 622 watts. Now let's go to the Mercury battery with the same toaster, 622 watt. It held 13.12 volts at 57.2 amps. So hopefully that tells you something, guys. So it tells you the higher the voltage is, alright, the higher the voltage is in your battery, the less work your battery has to do to produce the same energy. So we're looking at the Itechworld. We dropped down to 12.76 volts. The Scout 13.08 volts. The Mercury 13.12 volts. So let's see that reflected in the amperage draw. So the Itechworld 59.5. The Scout 58.3. The Mercury 57.2, because it's slightly higher voltage. So now that's the difference, guys. The Mercury, as if you watched the interview that I've done with Paul, if you haven't, watch that, and Paul will announce well, he does announce. Paul actually tells you why the Mercury keeps a higher voltage, because of the cells in there. So remember, guys, the Mercury 330 amp hour battery has got similar cells, it's got the same cells as what you get in the $5,700 Victron 12 volt 330 amp hour battery. So you can see that it's more efficient. It can hold the voltage higher. Now this is just with a small load. So we're only talking 622 watts. I mean, granted, that is still, for some of you that is still a big load. Most of you probably wouldn't ever push that. But we got a decent Victron gear set up here that can sustain easily 1600 watt loads. So now the next test, we added the kettle. So now we're running a toaster and a kettle. The Itechworld, the voltage then dropped down to about 12.11 to 12.18. Okay, towards the end there, after I ran it for about 10 minutes, it was down to 12.11. Now it's 1.32 kilowatt load, so it's 1320 watt load on my inverter. Important thing here, guys, I didn't talk about the temp. With the toaster on its own, the battery positive, so I've got a Victron battery temp monitor that monitors the temperature on the positive terminal of the batteries. That was recorded 29 degrees Celsius. And all round, at the toaster running, all batteries were very similar. The Mercury was a degree cooler. As soon as I added the kettle onto the Itechworld, now remember the Itechworld is rated a continuous discharge, according to the specs online, of 150 amps. Well, we were pushing 142.2, and that battery positive terminal was rising. 40 plus. By the time we finished the test, it was something like about 44, and it was still rising. So as soon as I put that load on, pretty much immediately that temp went right up. And yet with the Scout, the temp didn't go up. It remained the same as what it was with a 622 watt load. The Mercury, the same. The Mercury actually a couple of degrees cooler, 15-20 degrees cooler than what the Itechworld ran with the same load. So that's the absolute max I would ever push out of the Itechworld safely, at least this one that I've got here. And that was on a relatively cool day, guys. So it's quite warm here today. So if I was running that Itechworld now, I don't think I would run any more than 120 amps out of it. So that's as far as we got with the testing of the Itechworld, because that was the max I could push it out to. We're looking at the toaster and kettle with the Itechworld. The voltage, as I explained, dropped down to about 12.12. And that was pushing 142.2 amp load. Now the same test using the Scout battery. The battery is 12.86, so it held almost 12.9 volts still in the battery at 133 amps. So you can see the difference, guys. The Itechworld was pushing 142 amps. We got 133 amps out of the Scout, because the Scout has got that higher voltage. Now on the Mercury, we're holding 12.93 volts. Okay, so let's go right that through. With the toaster and kettle on, with a 1.32 kilowatt load on my inverter, which is 1320 watts, thereabouts, the Mercury sustained 12.93 volts, the Scout 12.86, the Itechworld 12.12, thereabouts. Then we came out with the big test, the air fryer, my Taste the Difference Air Roaster Pro, that I've never been able to run in this system while I had the Itechworld unless I ran a generator. Well, now I'm able to run that. So the air fryer is rated at 1550 watts, and it's pretty much what it draws. So we got 1.56 kilowatts. So it's about 1,550, 1,560. Okay, so with the Scout battery voltage 12.77, nearly 12.8, and that's a load with nearly 164 amps. So the Scout battery maintained that almost 12.8 volts at 164 amps. The Mercury 12.86, it's about 0.1 of a volt more, 12.86 at 163.6. So slightly lower, not by much, slightly lower than what the Scout is. Now you can't go wrong with both batteries, guys. The Scout is, honestly, the Scout is just as good as the Mercury. The Mercury, yes, does have the better cells, but apart from that, it's very similar. So you can see, I mean, the advantages you have the Mercury is you got the extra 50 amp hours, okay, availability as well. So it's a 330 amp hour battery versus the Scout, the 280 amp hour. But still, guys, 280 amp hour is going to get you a long way. I've got the 330 amp hour mounted in the battery here now, guys, because frankly, that's the last test that we run. It's sitting in here, and to be honest, guys, I reckon that's the battery I'm going to get for myself. I think I'm going to stick to the Mercury. As always, guys, if there's any questions, ask in a comment below. I'll do my best to answer. But I'm sure Paul from Powerpaul Australia, the manufacturers of these batteries, will also answer any technical questions that you'll have. So, till next time, guys. That was fun. I had a lot of fun doing those tests. And I've got more videos coming, guys. I've got some cooking videos coming up, testing all my Victron gear, all the cooking 240 volt cooking equipment that I've got, using the using the Mercury Powerpaul Australia Mercury battery. So again, guys, if you're new at this and you're just watching this video and you haven't watched the other series, if you're wondering about these batteries, they're made in Australia with mostly Australian components, except obviously for the lithium cells, because we don't make any lithium cells here in Australia, not that I know of anyway. So they are sourced from overseas, but Paul sources really good quality cells, as you can see, particularly with both the Scout and the Mercury. I mean, guys, the Mercury's got the cells equivalent in a $5,700 battery sold in Australia with very similar specs. And in fact, that battery doesn't have a BMS. You get a BMS with this one, and let me tell you, guys, it is a lot cheaper than the Victron battery. So if you're wondering where you can get these batteries from, Paul currently only sells them through his Facebook page, but I believe he is working on a website very soon. So there will be a website available soon. I just had some plastic. I think this plastic, so hot here, the plastic on the bottle just creaked on me and gave me a bit of a fright. Did you hear it, the click? Amazing. So 35.5 degrees at the moment right here. So summer's come, guys. Summer has hit us hard. Thank God tomorrow, apparently it's going to drop down to about 27 or 28, and by Friday it's going to be about 25 or 26. So I'm really looking forward to that, because I'm going to be doing some work in the garage here, guys, on this coming Friday. So the batteries are available through his Facebook page, which is Powerpaul Australia. So if you search for Powerpaul Australia and join his Facebook page, and then send Paul a PM message. Hey Paul, I'm interested in one of your batteries. And then he'll get back to you with a few questions, and he'll help you decide which battery is more appropriate. And prices are also on there. So if you go on his Facebook page, you'll see all the prices there. and you'll actually also will see the building process of the batteries. So Paul, contrary to a lot of other battery manufacturers in this country, they tried to hide as much as they can what's inside their battery. Paul is willing to show you and tell you exactly what components goes into his batteries. And guys, I'm going to have a video coming up very soon one day after we finish with the cooking series on a little bit more details about the battery, guys. So as I'm using them and I'm learning and I know what I can get out of the battery, so I'll have another video on that to keep you updated on that. So guys, till next time, any questions, ask below. Please be kind to everyone. Treat everyone as you would like to be treated yourself. Go out there, have camping. Go out there, have fun camping. And until next time, cheers. Look after yourself. Bye.